Hi, Emily here, and this is the Audacious Swan Diva series on Kindgom Feminism. My name is Emily, and I'm a certified sustainability expert with a master's degree in leadership for sustainable development. I also have a bachelor's degree in sociology and social work. Again, I have a wide extensive years, about 15 years experience as a creative entrepreneur. So I'm so happy to come again and to present to you and share my thoughts and to share my thoughts on the topic of feminism and trying to make a correlation with some biblical texts and incidences, and also make a direct inferences into the present day sustainability and sustainable goals, as well as the feminism perspective of women empowerment. So I'm so happy to bring to you this. I hope you would enjoy it, and don't forget to subscribe and to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share the news, spread of word. Today I'm going to talk about the interesting Queen of Sheba, how she exercised her political position, as well as how she also navigated her economic prominence and traveled to Jerusalem to see the wise king, King Solomon, and how I'm going to make an inferences into the modern day feminism and how the feminists also view this in retrospection with sustainability, gender equality, sustainable development goal 5. So without much ado, I want to talk about, give a brief background about the Queen of Sheba. The Queen of Sheba, we believe, is coming from Africa. Ethiopia is one of the prominent countries in Africa, and she came from Africa and traveled all the way to Jerusalem with a lot of possessions. She has a lot of economic dominance, for that matter. So she traveled to Jerusalem to see the king Solomon, and also to ask him tough and hard questions. This is where it gets interesting. She was very informed about global issues, because from all the way from Africa to Israel or to Jerusalem, she was well read and well informed, and she was very intellectually capacitated to go to the wisest king of the land at the time to ask him tough questions. So we can find this in First Chronicles chapter 10, verse 1 all the way down to 10. And then, okay, so I'll just make a brief account of it. This is what it says. That when the Queen of Sheba heard about the fame of Solomon and his relations in the name of the Lord, she came to test him with hard questions, arriving at Jerusalem with a very great caravan with camels, carrying spices, large quantity of gold, precious stones. She came to Solomon and talked with him about all that she had heard. Verse 10, it says, and she gave the king 120 talents of gold, large quantities of spices, and precious stones. Great. So this is economic possession that she had. And I also want to make an inferences about what the feminists also say, or what it meant by a feminist. So a feminist is someone who believes in the social, political, economic rights of both genders. So the Queen of Sheba was very much aware of her rights, of her dominion, and her possessions. And she had the possessions, she had all these great properties or possessions in terms of minerals, gold, and also had things like this precious stones, I'm interested to know these precious stones also, and of course, coming with caramels. Caravan. In the caravan, she traveled. So she traveled in an envoy. I can just imagine how it was traveling from all the way from Ethiopia to Jerusalem at the time, with a whole lot of servants. Just make a pictorial picture this mental picture of how the queen elegantly dressed with gold minerals like silver and gold around her, and with her whole entourage of a caravan and servants coming along with her. She really had an authority in that political landscape of Ethiopia at the time. So she exercised her socio-economic rights. This is what the feminists are saying, that someone who believes in the socio-political rights, socio-political and economic rights of both genders. So she knew her place, and then she knew what she had and what she possessed, and then she made judicious use of it. And she was very much intellectually inclined, and she wanted to know more, and she was very much aware of her environment, of the world news. Let's say if it was this time, maybe she would have been very much inclined to BBC and all the Al Jazeera, the CNN. She was well informed and intellectually capacitated, so she knew what was happening on the global scale, and she was very brave. She exercised her thought, and she exercised her freedom and her strength as a noble woman to travel and to seek more knowledge, and from the other from his counterpart, who was also a king, that is King Solomon at the time. So this is a classic example of what the feminist is saying. Someone who she believed in the wisdom of Solomon, and also she has heard about the possessions that Solomon had. And when you go down into this account of the Queen of Sheba in 1 Kings chapter 10, verse 1 all the way down to 12, you would realize all this. So I would encourage you to also take a look at it. And also, coming down here into the perspectives, or to Hasheimi Etal in a modern day period, who had their academic research paper in rural Bangladesh. They came up with some indicators that tells about the empowered woman. So this is what they said. 1, economic security. Queen of Sheba had wealth as a queen of Ethiopia, traveling with the minerals and the caravans and the spices, and even not to give to herself, she went to give them to the king Solomon at the time. So she was very economically secured. And also ability to purchase and also to make small purchases. Well, ability to make large quantities, involvement in major decision making. I believe that the Queen of Sheba went to Solomon, testing him with those hard questions that she had, to be able to have more insight into her political reign in Ethiopia at the time. So this has a direct reflection on the involvement in a major decision making. Of course, political and legal awareness, as I have already said, that she was aware of the political landscape of Jerusalem at the time. If it were today, as I've said already, she would probably have an ardent follower or listener of the major news houses around the globe, and of course to be well informed of the global landscape and the global news at the time. So these are the indicators that in our 21st century, precisely in 1993, Hasheimi Etal in the academic work also projected as an indicator of an empowered woman, and of course gender equity, which the feminists also define as the someone who believes in the social, political, and social, political, and economic rights of both genders. So she believed in her social, political, and economic rights as a woman and as a feminine person, as a she. So this is something I found really interesting and want to put across here. And we also move to another domains that Hasheimi et al. In 1993 also came up with, when it comes to like the areas that indicate the women as an empowered woman or women encouraged. So the sense of one is a sense of vision of the future. The Queen of Sheba was very strategic. She was very forward-minded. She knew that she had a very strong sense of self and vision for herself and for, by extension, I believe, for Ethiopia. That is why she envisioned a bigger and a more prominent and a more sustainable land, or a more sustainable country that she was ruling at the time. Therefore, she wanted to know more. If it were today, maybe she was going to meet some of the biggest people, decision makers, from a global perspective. Maybe talk about people around the United Nations, talking about people around the EU, people around the AU, people around all over the place, that she would know more. So she had a very strong self-awareness and conviction of a vision for herself, and by extension for her country that she was ruling. This is actually what she said in account to this, that she said, "The report I had heard in my own country about your achievements and your wisdom is true." Yes, she exercised her control and she exercised her possession of her country of domination, of ruling as in my own country. Yes, not a borrowed land. She was really aware of herself and aware of the political jurisdiction that she was reigning at the time. And aside that, one of the domains that is aside the sense of self and vision of the future, she also spoke about Hasheimi et al. In 1993 also is speaking about mobility and visibility. Yes, she traveled from Ethiopia all the way to Jerusalem. And she was very obvious because she had all these entourage with the minerals and the caravans and the camels that she was riding on, and all the people that were accompanying her, and even the servants that were on that trip with her. It makes me remember the historical Mansa Musa when he was traveling from Africa with all his wealth. This is a direct correlation. And Mansa Musa is one of the strongest and one of the most richest kings in the ancient African empire. King Mansa Musa, I would recommend that you want to engage yourself and just read a little more about him. And of course, ability to earn a living, decision-making power in a household, ability to interact effectively in public. Guess what? This is what ECV say, and it goes on to say here that verse 6, she said this is verse 3, it says, Solomon answered all her questions. This was not in private. I believe she was a show girl. This wasn't in private, it was in public. And this is what confirms it, that Solomon answered all her questions, and nothing was too hard for the king to explain to her. When the Queen of Sheba saw all the wisdom of Solomon and the palace he had built, the food on his table and the seating of his officials, and the attending servants in their robes, his cupbearers, and the burnt offerings he had at the temple of the Lord, she was overwhelmed. Wow. So she was really abreast with time. She knew her environment. She studied the environment. And of course, she had also had a lot of information. She had done her due diligence, well informed, well armed with her intelligence and information. That is why she had that political or presidential visits, a royal presidential visit to King Solomon, and they had that discussion. And of course, after having all those discussions, she looked around and see how the cupbearers were all dressed in their aprons and in their beautiful uniforms, and the officials at the king's palace. She was now convinced that indeed this is something, or this is someone that she wants to associate with. And this is what it's also translating here, that ability to interact effectively in public. I know and I believe that Queen of Sheba was a very strong and a very confident personality that we can all take some inferences or take some inspiration from. So this has been an interesting thing, taking into references of the modern day feminist movement, or the feminism that talks about the social, political, and economic rights of both genders, which of course Queen of Sheba made sure that she exercised her rights in those areas as a queen, as an economic leader, and someone who possessed the land and of course had access to these possessions, and not just keeping it to herself, but of course traveling around the world, to see her fellow counterpart who was equally wealthy, and then giving out. I believe this was it was a gesture of improving, a vision of a gesture of improving, or maybe establishing an economic trade between Jerusalem and Ethiopia. So she was very an economic person who was well versed in trade and industry. She knew the right things to do, the strategic things to do, to strike a royal agreement and a powerful presidential accord between Ethiopia and Jerusalem. So this is an interesting thing that I feel that feminism has gone way beyond dating down into the 15th or the into the ADs or the BCs at the time, and looking at all these qualities that these feminists in the Bible had up their sleeves. So once again, I like to say that this is an insightful thing that I have thought, and I'm happy to share with you. So this has been the Audacious Swan Diva series on Kingdom Feminism in relation to gender equity, which is the Sustainable Development Goal 5, as people would also largely say the gender equality, but I like to call it gender equity, which is an interesting discussion that I had a privilege to discuss. Thank you so much, and I hope to see you sometime. Don't forget to subscribe, share, and follow up for new discussions around the Audacious Swan Diva series of feminist kingdom feminism in the gender equity series of women empowerment. Thank you so much. Great. Bye.